Good morning, everyone. Today I just wanted to update with a new and I believe a better video about how to structure a Paper 1 Part A IB Economics essay. Okay, so this is the essay where you have to analyze. Okay, this essay is out of 10 marks and you should write it in about 25 to 30 minutes. But before we get started, let's play the intro. All right, so as I said in this video, I'm going to focus on how to construct or how to structure a Paper 1 Part A essay in IB Economics. As I said before the intro, this essay is in Paper 1, and this applies to standard level as well as higher level. It's worth 10 marks. You should construct this essay in about 30 minutes, and this is the analysis essay. You don't actually have to evaluate or use a real world example. That's Paper 1 Part B. Okay, and I will have a video coming up next about Paper 1 Part B. All right, so what I have here is I started with the assessment criteria. You can see there are 5 levels. Okay, so level 1, 2, 4, and 5. Okay, it's out of 10 marks, so the highest level is the mark bands of 9 to 10 out of 10. And this is what you need to do. You need to make sure that the specific demands of the question are understood and addressed, that you have understood and addressed the specific demands of the question, that relevant economic theory is fully explained, that you have explained. So you have economic theory is most relevant to the question, and you've fully explained it. Relevant economic terms are used appropriately throughout the response. You have used them appropriately throughout the response. You don't actually need to define key terms, but you need to use the relevant key terms appropriately throughout the response. And then where appropriate, relevant diagram or diagrams are included. You have drawn the relevant diagram or diagrams, and you have fully explained them. Many students just think, oh, I'll draw the diagram and leave it there as decoration, and that's enough. No, whatever diagram or diagrams you draw, you need to follow with an explanation of the diagram. Okay, so this is how to access level 5. So we're talking, I'm assuming everybody's aiming for the highest level. Okay, all right, what do you do? Start by defining 1 to 2 key terms. Remember, I told you, you don't actually have to. I tell my students it's better to define 1 or 2 key terms because this signals to the examiner that you understand those key terms, all right? Defining a way of showing your understanding. Then you explain relevant economic theory. You want to explain it fully. Then you draw and explain a diagram, or some questions you might need 2 diagrams. But make sure that you draw and you explain a diagram. And this is the most important part. It's not just enough to define key terms, explain theory, and draw a diagram. You need to make sure you've actually linked back to the question to make sure that you have, okay? So some IB economics students that I've had in the past would look at the question, they see, okay, oh, negative externalities of consumption. And then they just write everything they know about negative externalities of consumption and they draw a diagram, but they didn't really link back to the question. They haven't really addressed the demands of the question. Okay, so I've got here 3 examples from the specimen paper. Okay, just to kind of get you started about how to think about constructing those essays. So let's have a look at question 1. Explain 2 ways a government might respond to the existence of asymmetric information in the market. Now, what I have highlighted, that's the key term that you should define. So just start the essay, okay, by, now you can start the essay by actually borrowing part of the question to help you structure your introduction paragraph. So you can start the essay by saying, Two ways a government might respond to the existence of asymmetric information in a market include way number one and way number two, period. And then you define asymmetric information. Asymmetric information is a form of market failure whereby so and so and so and so. Okay. Now, what would be the relevant economic theory? So after you've sort of borrowed part of the question, make sure you borrow part of the question to structure your introductory paragraph before you define the key term. After you've defined asymmetric information, now what you might be thinking, what is the relevant economic theory? Well, here, the relevant economic theory is market failure, right? Because asymmetric information is a type of market failure. Yes, asymmetric information is only fits, okay? But it's the same thinking process. So then you would go ahead to explain what is asymmetric information, how does it relate to moral hazard and adverse selection. There's no real diagram for asymmetric information. That's why it says where appropriate, draw a diagram. So actually in the mark scheme for this question, it says diagram is not required, okay? Then you would explain that, okay, so this is asymmetric information. This is what causes asymmetric information. The government can respond by doing so and so and so and so. Okay, so then you can just kind of wrap up again by saying, to conclude, two ways a government might respond to the existence of asymmetric information include so and so and so and so. Okay, let's have a look at this question from macroeconomics. Explain to a central bank to conduct expansionary monetary policy. Okay, I've highlighted monetary policy because that's the key term that I believe should be defined in the question. Okay, so how do you start your essay? You start by saying two tools open to a central bank to conduct expansionary monetary policy include so and so and so and so and so and so, and then define monetary policy. Monetary policy is defined as so and so and so and so. Explain that expansionary monetary policy would be used during periods of recession when there is high unemployment and the economy is sort of slowing down. Okay, and then you would draw a diagram. You want to show expansionary monetary policy and side policy. So you want to show an increase in aggregate demand when the government conducts expansionary monetary policy. Then you show how does the government actually conduct expansionary monetary policy. Well, the central bank can do several things. If you go back and you review the tools of monetary policy, then at the very end, you've drawn your diagram, explain your diagram, and I have plenty of samples. If you go to the members area, and if you go to my playlist with sample essays, you'll see plenty of samples, okay? And then you make sure at the end, finish with two tools open to a central expansionary monetary policy include so and so and so. Suraj, how long should the answer for this question be ideally? So we don't tell students how long it should. You should be writing this essay in about 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so you should aim to write the essay. One paragraph. So to answer your question, Suraj, you should have one paragraph that's really just kind of your intro. Okay, this is where you kind of, borrow part of the question and answer it in short. So you're just kind of giving the short form answer. And this is where you sort of define relevant key terms. Okay. Then the next paragraph is where you sort of explain relevant theory plus the diagram. And you can call the diagram, say, figure 1 below, so that you can kind of refer to it in your explanation. Then here you've got your diagram. Make sure the diagram is fully labeled, as well as fully explained in the body of the essay, okay? And then you can kind of label it figure 1, and this makes it easier to refer to it. Now, whatever curve the diagram should be referred to. So say, for example, if you have, average price level and real GDP, and then you've got AD shifting to AD1, for example, and here you've got the SRS, make sure you're actually using those labels. So as shown in figure 1, when the conventional monetary policy, the AD curve will shift to the right from AD to AD1. Make sure those labels are kind of used to show the examiner that you can't just draw the diagram, you can also explain it. And then you want to have a sort of conclusion paragraph. The conclusion paragraph is where you link back to question. So it should be about, I would say, 2 paragraphs, the diagram, and then the conclusion paragraph. So kind of 3 paragraphs and the diagram. Some people might place the diagram before the explanation. It doesn't matter. A lot of my students prefer to kind of introduce, answer the question in short, define relevant key terms, and then draw the diagram. And then while explaining economic theory, they are merging explaining the theory with explaining the diagram. And then you have your conclusion paragraph. You can sort of swap these around. It doesn't really matter. As long as relevant economic theory is fully explained and whatever diagram or diagrams you draw are fully explained, you're fine, okay? But also don't forget the introduction and the conclusion. The introduction is where you borrow part of the question and kind of answer it in short form. And the conclusion is where you also make sure everything you've explained back to the question. Okay, so that it's not just separate paragraphs in a diagram without a real link back to the question. Suraj, does that answer your question? Also, I've got here another example from the global economy unit. So explain how currency depreciation might affect the country's current account balance. All right, I highlighted those 2 key terms because I believe these are the 2 key terms you should use in your introduction paragraph to define key. So you can start by saying currency depreciation might have several effects on a country's current account balance. Okay, currency depreciation is defined as so and so and so and so. Current account balance is defined as so and so and so and so. All right, and then you proceed to actually answer the question. According to economic theory, when a country's currency depreciates, exports will be cheaper for foreigners, will appear cheaper to foreigners, while will appear or will seem more expensive. This can have several effects on the country's current account balance. And then you proceed to explain, you draw a diagram, okay? A very good diagram here would be an diagram, okay? Or you could use an aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagram to show that when currency depreciates, foreign demand for exports increases and domestic demand for imports decreases. So ultimately have an AD-AS diagram with AD increasing. Why? Because export revenue increases, expenditure decreases. Make sure you've fully explained the diagram, and then you have your conclusion paragraph where you link back to the question. Okay, so a paper 1 part A essay should be written in about, we said 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes. It's worth 10 marks. Make sure you defined 1 to 2 key terms, explained relevant economic theory, drawn and fully explained a relevant diagram, back to the question to make sure that you have addressed it. Okay. Now you might be thinking, okay, so where can I find an example of this? Well, I have created several, but I'll show you one that I did recently. Okay, so explain 2 price mechanism. I started by defining the price mechanism. The price mechanism refers to the interaction of the forces of demand and supply to clear shortages and surpluses in markets in price. The price mechanism has 2 functions, a resource allocation function and a rationing function. This is my introductory paragraph. You'll notice I've actually answered the question here when I said the price mechanism has 2 functions. In short form, I've answered the question and I have defined price mechanism. So this is paragraph number 1. All right, paragraph number 2. The resource allocation function refers to the signaling and incentive functions of price. When price rises, this signals to producers and gives them an incentive to produce more of that good or service, and thus allocating more resources to the production of that good or service. It also signals to consumers that there is a shortage and gives them an incentive to consume less. Through the increased production and decreased consumption of that good or service, the shortage is eventually cleared and the market reaches a new equilibrium. A shortage will be the result of either an increase in demand or a decrease in supply. And see here, I've explained the first function, which is the resource allocation function. Then I've drawn and explained my diagram. As shown in figure 1 below, when demand increases and the demand curve shifts to the right from D to D1, you'll notice I'm using the same labels I have in the diagram. This creates excess demand, which I've labeled in the diagram, where quantity demanded, QD1 is down here, exceeds quantity supplied, which was the original equilibrium quantity at the original equilibrium price. This excess demand, this shortage, will exert an upward pressure on price. And as price gradually rises, the producers will gradually increase quantity supplied, and the consumers will gradually decrease quantity demanded until a new equilibrium is reached at a higher price, P1, which is the same label I've used here, and a higher quantity, QE1. Do you see how my explanation of the diagram uses the labels in the diagram to show the examiner that I actually understand the diagram I've drawn and I can use it in my analysis? The rise in price, this is supposed to be in price, I'm sorry. The rise in price signals to producers to produce more and gives them an incentive to do so, while also signaling to consumers to consume less and gives them an incentive to do so. So far, I've only explained the first function of price. All right, the second function of the price mechanism is the rationing function. Changes in prices will determine how the product is distributed based on the willingness and ability to pay. If there is a shortage, price gradually rises, and so only the consumers who are both willing and able to pay that higher price will be the ones who actually get the product. In this way, price helps distribute or ration the product. Now, I could have just concluded here, by the way, but I decided to add another paragraph, okay, to talk about how this works in the opposite direction as well. So the resource allocation and the functions of the price mechanism also excess supply, a surplus in the market. When there's a surplus in the market, price gradually falls, and this signals to producers to produce less and incentivizes them to decrease quantity supplied, while also signaling to consumers to consume more and incentivizing them to increase quantity demanded. And the falling price gradually increases willingness and ability to pay, and so rations distributes this excess supply so that more consumers buy the product. And then this paragraph here is where I make sure I'm linking back to the question. To conclude, the two main functions of the price mechanism are the resource allocation, signaling incentivizing function, and the rationing function. You can see here I followed that structure. The question was explain two functions of the price mechanism. I answered the question in short form in the introduction paragraph, as well as defined price mechanism. I explained the first function of the price mechanism. I explained and drew a diagram. Then I explained the second function of the price mechanism. Then I added a conclusion paragraph. Okay, it's the same structure I just showed you. So, did I define 1 to 2 key terms? Yes. Did I explain relevant economic theory and answer the question? Yes. Did I draw and explain a relevant diagram? Yes. Did I link back to the question to make sure that I have addressed it? Yes. Okay, and that's essentially what you need to do. And you have about 30 minutes. This is just the analysis essay. You are analyzing using key terms, key economic theory, and the diagram. Okay, I hope you found this video useful. I tried to kind of move away from the sentence starters that I have given you in the older version of this video, because in my experience in the past couple of years, students get so hung up on using these sentence starters that they kind of lose focus. Okay, you don't need those sentence starters. Just think, I need an introductory paragraph where I borrow part of the question and answer it in short, and I define 1 or 2 relevant key terms. I need the next paragraph where I explain the diagram and then I refer to it, give the diagram a name, and use all the labels. I need a diagram that's fully labeled and fully explained in the body of the essay. Could be in the paragraph before, or if you swap those 2 paragraphs, it could be in the paragraph after. and then a conclusion where I'm linking back to the question to make sure that I have addressed it. If you like this video, please press the like button. So friends, you can look at the links that I have below for the several ways you can support this channel, the IB Econ Guru. You can buy me a coffee or become a channel member. I have plenty of exclusive content for channel members that is updated weekly. If you look at the IB Econ Guru revision camp, that's where I review the entire syllabus over the course of the academic year. It can be a chance for you to basically review with me the entire syllabus. Have a great Monday. Have a great school week. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time. Bye.